Right.
Yeah, so if anyone's missed any other old recordings, they will be on our YouTube channel, which I will share again and again on Twitter, which you can access. I will put the links up for you if you want to access them. But yeah, definitely worth going back and checking the other workshops with Rosemary, because they're very important as well, and they will kind of give you an idea of the progress we've had so far. And yeah, if you have any questions, just you can write to me on the chat or contact me afterwards. I will put my email addresses down as well, and any other relevant links. But yeah, I don't have much more to say than thank you everyone who's joining, and I hand it over to you, Rosemary.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Maddie, for having me. And I'm excited. This is the third in the series, and have all been designed around building blocks to nurture your talent. So mostly for career professionals, students are really helpful for, but it's just a way to look inward to start changing things about you and developing more. So I really want you to take on board you've just come to this session today. Thank you and welcome. And if you haven't, I invite you to listen to the other three sessions that were, the first one was on confidence building and the second one was on imposter syndrome. So today's session, can I just ask everyone to put their computer on mute? Can we mute so that there's no interruptions, because I want you to get the maximum from me. So if everybody, yeah, that's wonderful. I think most people are on mute. There's just one more I think I can still hear. Paola, I'm going to mute you. I've got the power. Not that I'm power hungry or anything. Okay, glad I don't want any more interruptions. I really want to give you my full attention. So today's session is about emotional intelligence and how you can nurture it and really help you to build on it and create more success, so you can develop your emotional intelligence and really add up to your toolkit to help you to build better relationships and your career and personal development. So thank you very much for joining me for this session. I'll just tell you a little bit about me. Again, if you've been listening, you already know a little bit about me, but for those who are new, my name is Rosemary Wilson. I am a speaker, a coach. I'm an international speaker, a coach, a mentor, and a facilitator. This is my the second chapter in my career. I was working in finance first, and then fintech and change management, implementing large-scale financial systems in oil and gas. So I've worked for some of the world's largest oil and gas companies. And for me, I felt that there was something different that I wanted to do. I wanted to have my own business, number one, and I wanted to use what I considered to be a gift of my interpersonal skills and communication to do something different. So I retrained as a coach, and now I am the founder of Pragmatica Coaching, which is a coaching and training company. I work one-to-one mainly with women, with female professionals who want to either thrive in their career, thrive in their role, or take the next step in their career. And I also work with organizations, delivering workshops for those organizations who are really committed to investing in and nurturing the talent within their organization, whilst supporting a culture of diversity and inclusion. So that's what I'm all about. If you want to connect with me, I'll give you some details at the end how you can find me. And if you want me to come and speak at your organization or speak at an event, then obviously come and let me know, connect with me. So that's just a little bit about me. And so today's session, I'm going to start with this phrase from Aristotle. Anybody can become angry. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everyone's power and is not easy. So does that make sense to you? You know, we can all become angry, but where does that anger take you? What can you do with it? How beneficial is it to you and the person you are becoming angry at? Does it change anything? You know, when we think about our emotions, and I see a lot of this going on in today's fast-moving, fast-paced society, that people become so angry at the slightest touch. What can we do differently? I don't think anger solves any problems. I think it's better to do something different with how you handle your emotions, how you handle your anger. Now, I'm not saying become numb. I'm just saying think about the outcome you want to achieve. What's the best outcome for the situation? And if blowing off steam by becoming angry is not really what you want to achieve, then maybe you can start thinking a little bit differently. That's where that is going. That's what that means for me. So what am I going to cover today? I'm going to talk about emotional intelligence. We'll cover some of the, what is it exactly? We'll talk about the basic 5 key factors. There's a book by Daniel Goleman. I've got to get this right. EQ, emotional intelligence, why it can matter more than IQ. And you know, if you want to get deeper into that, I encourage you. There's lots of books around on the subject. You can find that book. I can find the correct title for you. We'll talk about the key factors. How does EQ improve your relationships? What about these emotive reactions? How can you choose them? How can you choose differently? What can you do? How can you start thinking differently about your emotional reactions? And how can you develop your EQ? It's great that I'm sharing all this knowledge with you, but what can you do to help yourself, to help others? And I'm going to talk about the benefits, what's not to love. We love benefits, we love to know the impacts. Why should this matter? Why should you do anything differently? So I would encourage you, if relationships, people skills is important to you, then I would encourage you to do something differently after this call, after this webinar. And then I'll open up to Q&A, but please pop your questions in the box because I can't see you, so I feel like I'm talking to the screen. So keep the chat coming. If there's something I say that you don't understand or you want to know more about, let me know so that we can get to that either at the end or during the session when we have perhaps some pauses. I will cover a lot of ground. As you can imagine, you know, I'm going to speak for about 45 minutes. It's a heavy topic. It's a big topic. It's a deep topic. It's not something that can be changed in 45 minutes. So if you're here thinking I'm going to give you the answer, the key, that's not going to happen. You will still have to do some work. And it's not an overnight thing either. It's something that I've been working on my own emotional intelligence for years and years and years and years. Sorry. But I think it's so powerful, so important, so amazing when you get to learning more and becoming a bit of an expert on the topic. So I want to invite you. So I'm going to do my first bit of interaction. I would like you to tell me what's your level or understanding of what's your level of understanding of emotional intelligence? So I'm going to launch a poll and I'd love you to answer that. So none, you have no idea, you just came along because you're like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. A basic knowledge or a solid knowledge. You already have a solid knowledge. So for those of you who have a solid background, it'd be really wonderful to get your input into this conversation as well. If you think something differently or you've done something differently, that would be really, really handy for me to hear from you, because we can all learn from each other. Because also my take on emotional intelligence could be completely different from someone else's. So, okay, that's great. So none, basic, solid, you've answered. So we're looking at 14% of you have no understanding of emotional intelligence, 73% have basic knowledge, and 14% of you have a solid knowledge. So you're the experts. Thank you very much for doing that. So I will end the poll in a second, and in the meantime I'll jump to the next because I've got a lot of ground to cover, and we'll get to that in a second. So what is the Webster's, so to speak, definition? So EQ definition, the definition of emotional intelligence. I'll flip through emotional intelligence and EQ. Some people call it EI. So I use EQ, but they both mean the same thing. So the definition is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So that basically means handle your relationships so to be aware of your emotions and be in control of them. We all understand. To handle your interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically means you handle them in a way that is, you make a good judgment call, you balance them. And empathetically means you're able to look at a situation through another person's eyes. So that's what that is. For me, EQ is about where head meets heart. It's about that balance that we so rarely really reach in life. So your head is very rational, very logical, and your emotions are based on your feelings. They tend to be quite powerful and not always particularly rational and logical. So I like to look at emotional intelligence as where the two balance each other out, and where you're able to balance the two out. Let's go back to the poll. I just want to give you so I'm going to end the poll, and then you should be able to see the results. I'm going to share the results with you. So that's pretty much what I was expecting, that the basic knowledge of would be that everybody would be, they'd have a basic knowledge, and a few people have none, and some people would be more experts. I'm just going to check. I see something in there. Okay, I just want to make sure that you can hear me. If I see messages, sometimes it means that you can't hear me. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And so I'm going to ask you again now to scale. Where on the scale do you currently place your level of emotional intelligence? So bearing in mind that it's about balancing your emotions, about not flying off the handle, being empathetic, being welcoming and inclusive. So if you base it on that, where would you place your level of emotional intelligence on the scale? So I'm going to stop sharing that. So 2 polls relatively back to back. I've shared the results already. So now we want to look at poll number 2. So where would you place your level? So 1 being on the level of, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Where do you place your level of emotional intelligence? So where are you on the scale? So it'd be interesting to see and maybe hear from you if you're okay to share later on. For those who are perhaps not on a higher scale, is where can you see improvements? What can you do differently? And perhaps, you know, when you pop that in, maybe you could pop that in the chat box, so you can put scale, so I know what you're referring to. You could say a scale, I'd like to improve, or scale, just put what you want to improve. Maybe you get angry, maybe you fly off the handle, maybe you're constantly having arguments with your partner or with people at work, maybe there's miscommunication. So what would you like to improve for those who have an area that they want to improve in? So maybe that's for those who aren't at a 10. What would you like to improve it in? Mine is my partner, he processes a lot of information. So I'll be having, and I think this happens in couples, I'll be saying something to him, he'll nod, he'll listen, yeah, and I'm like, he's not listening. And then sometimes I'm okay and I'll repeat it later in a different phrase, but sometimes I get a little bit annoyed. I'm like, he's so not listening to me. Why doesn't he just tell me he's not listening to me? But he doesn't know he's not listening to me. He thinks he's registering. So there's some areas that I wish I could I want to improve. I have gone a long way, but there's still work to do. But I'm not perfect. But, you know, hey ho, I still wish for perfection or something similar to it. So thank you very much for sharing that with me. I'm going to end the poll now and I will share the results. So we're around about the 3 to 5 to 7 to 9 mark. So 22% at 3 to 5, 52% 5 to 7, and 26% 7 to 9. So that's a kind of mid ground. So it'd be interesting to see where you are perhaps at the end of this, if you think anything has changed for you. So I'm just going to share the results there. And so what are the elements? We'll talk about the elements of the 5 key elements of emotional intelligence. So for me, it's about self-awareness. Not for me, this is from the book Daniel Goleman, but this is how I see it. It's a nice framework. Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. And I'll talk about what each one of those means. So first of all, self-awareness. So how much of your behaviors and emotions are you aware of? How are you always looking at yourself thinking there's nothing to improve? You know, are you someone who flies off the handle? Do you get angry quickly? You know, do you get really super anxious about situations? How balanced are you around the self-awareness? And how much does your behavior align with your values? Also, are you someone who repels people? Do people walk in the opposite direction when they see you coming? or do they gravitate towards you because they know that you're going to treat them well, they know that you're going to have something wonderful to say, you're going to be encouraging, you're going to be positive, you're going to be practical, you're going to be fair, all of those wonderful things, you're going to be welcoming, inclusive? Or are you the type of person who just talks about themselves? It's all about me, I've had a bad day, this is me, you know, that kind of narcissistic side of you comes out, you know, so that people avoid you because you're either going to bring the level of energy down, or because you're just going to be focused on yourself and all the kind of negative things going on around you. So what type of person are you? How aware of your emotions and your behaviors are you? It is quite a powerful state to know how much influence you have on others. It's quite a powerful place to get to in life. And I know that there's lots of people who are really, really great at it. You can just see by the way they carry themselves, and some people who aren't. Can someone who's unmuted themselves? I've just got some typing going on. If you could mute yourself, please. I don't want to have to go through to see who it is on a naughty step. So how aware of your emotions and behaviors are you? And that leads into the second stage, you know, your self-regulation. So you're aware, you know that you've got room for improvement, or you're absolutely amazing and you make everyone feel welcoming. So how do you regulate these emotions? So how far are you able to control your emotions, your impulses, and your actions? So are you someone who flies off the handle again, and then everybody around you doesn't want to listen to you, you kind of alienate them, they want to move away from you quickly? Or are you someone who knows that you're angry, you're in this situation, so you just say, well, I know I'm pissed off, I know I'm angry, I know I'm not feeling great, so perhaps I can temper that or take myself out of the situation so that I don't influence those around me? Those types of things. So how well are you able to self-regulate? So what impact do your actions have on others? You know, your partner, your work colleagues, your family, your children. How, because people sense this stuff as well. Even if you think you're not smarting, you're not angry, you're not boiling, you can create an atmosphere. You know, you talk about energy, walking into a room, you can cut the atmosphere with a knife. That can come from around you as well. So how much are you aware of that? So that the self-regulation piece. Let's talk about your motivation. So people who have a high degree of emotional intelligence are often self-motivated. They're kind of goal-focused or action-focused, task-focused. They get things done. They delay immediate gratification for the longer-term goals, or the more meaningful goals, or the more helpful goals. And they use these strengths to help others. So you motivate yourself, you're self-motivated, and you're able to motivate and galvanize those around you. So that's the motivation piece. Empathy is the ability to observe and understand from another's point of view. This can be quite hard. You know, you go to the supermarket and someone's really annoyed with you, or you're getting on the train. Back in the day when we could get on the trains, you get on the train and people are pushing and shoving. And that's really, really hard to be empathetic when they're behaving like that, or when someone in the workplace, when someone is speaking to you in a way that's not particularly helpful. Now, it can be hard to empathize with that person, but there's a reason why each one of us does that. And to be able to kind of put yourself in that person's shoes and say they're doing the best they can in that moment is quite hard, and that does require the patience of a saint. So that's why I say you have to really practice developing your emotional intelligence, because that ability to say, I'm not going to be triggered by that person's behavior is quite hard. It can be quite difficult. But I always say that I don't take on other people's moods, because then if they've got a bad mood, they're going to ruin my day, and I'm not up for that. I'm up for peaceful living, loving living. You know, what can I do rather than what can't I do? That's my attitude to life. And I take that and embrace that wherever I go. It's taken me years, again, to get here. I've kind of always been like that, but to develop this kind of expertise is really quite powerful. And I'm really grateful to be in this situation. And again, think perspective. So think about when someone else is not feeling great, or they're not behaving in a way that you understand, think about their perspective. What could you do to understand them more? Those are the types of questions, but I'll give you some pointers for what you can do there. If you're relating to any of this, or you've got any questions, pop them in the box, and then we can get to them in a little while towards the end. So social skills, again, emotional intelligence is about your people skills. Emotional intelligence is about understanding yourself and understanding others. You see those people that they walk into a room and everybody kind of moves towards them. You can see them naturally at a party or something. Everybody's buzzing around them at the end, and then there's a couple of pockets of people there's just one and two groups, but everyone's kind of gravitating towards this person. They've got really good energy, they've got really good people skills. They're really able to create, build, and maintain good relationships. They're really good at being communicative. Effective communication is their strong point. And rather than focusing on self and ego, they're focused on the we, a collective. So they think about what impact they can make in the collective, and they're very inclusive. You can see those people and they're just either really naturally good at it, or they've been working at it for years. So there are the kind of the social skills. They're the 5 elements, and that's what they consist of. So obviously those 5 elements are so powerful for nurturing your relationships. Relationships are key to the way we live. We're all struggling at the moment. Some people are struggling more than others about not being able to see their friends, family, loved ones going into the office. Now we can see how important our relationships are that we perhaps used to take for granted. So developing your emotional intelligence, those 5 key elements will really help you to improve your relationships, because you'll start to see how you're better at a collective rather than just me, myself, and I. Again, the whole ego thing. Naturally, nurturing your emotional intelligence will just naturally improve the quality of your relationships, because the person in front of you that you're speaking to will say, oh, that person's really thoughtful, they're thinking of me, they're asking me questions, they're curious, because you're developing your people skills. And then you've got the 5 elements that when they all come together, they help you to be more balanced with your conversations, with your communication, how you think about others. So that's definitely a wonderful plus point for nurturing your emotional intelligence. And whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, it's really, really powerful. If you currently aren't very good at, speaking to people or speaking up, I really encourage you to work on one element at least of your emotional intelligence and start to see what the results are. So perhaps you could work on your self-awareness first. I was asked last week, I ran a session last week on emotional intelligence, and actually this question comes up all the time. Of those 5 elements, which are the most important? And I think they're all important individually, but for me, the 3 that are most important are self-awareness, because if you're not aware of your behavior and the impact on others, it's really hard to change anything. So that's the first. Once you become aware of your behaviors and your emotions and your actions, how do you then regulate that so that you don't become so easily triggered to kind of, again, I use the term fly off the handle, or triggered to get involved in harmful behaviors or harmful emotive behaviors. So self-awareness, self-regulation. And the third one for me would have to be empathy. So when you are more empathetic and put yourself in a place of understanding, then that just automatically develops the other 2 of motivation and social skills. So for me, the first 3 would be self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. So I would say work on one of those first, self-awareness first, then self-regulation, then empathy. So if you're looking to do something, but again, up to you, find the one that works for you. But I really do encourage you, if you want to develop better relationships, I would really, really encourage you. Does anyone have any questions at the moment, or am I just going in? Anyone? Am I going too fast? Can I slow down? You want me to slow down? Is there anything that you want to ask? I will get to what you can do differently, because now I'm giving you the basics, the understanding. Okay, so you might think of some questions in a second. It's so easy to manage your emotions when you're feeling great. You know, you go around chirping, you're smiling, you're saying hello to the postman, it's all wonderful. You go into a shop, you say good morning, how's your day, have a good day. So wonderful, lightness, you know, it's all around you. But when you've got that mood hanging over you, so you have an experience and it's not a particularly good experience, or something happens and then the cloud comes and you can't find that strength or that energy to have a conversation that is helpful or positive. I'm going to say helpful rather than positive. So you just get into that kind of dark space. But then afterwards you can reflect. So I am so a fan of choosing your emotive reactions, and that just again takes time. So you're able to reflect. How many times have you been in a situation where something's happened and you've got into this really dark, foul mood, and on reflection you say, well, I could have done this, I should have done that, or you don't say that, you just say, well, I was pissed off, I want to be pissed off, I'm entitled to be pissed off, I don't care, I'm just going to do that. So, you know, what would you really prefer? Do you want to have a choice? So do I get pissed off? Does it warrant me being pissed off? Does it warrant me being angry? Or would I prefer to handle this situation more deliberately with a better outcome? So, you know, your emotive reactions have a choice. They say you can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you respond to it. And that is so true. If you're used to getting angry or behaving in an unhelpful manner, that is the path of least resistance. You will carry on with that. But if you want to do something different, you just take that time to stop, think about what's in your control. What choice do I have? So all of those, you know, the experience, having an experience, reflecting on that experience, and then choosing, if this happened again, what would I do? And then recognizing what's in your control. It's just such a more helpful way to be if you want to develop your emotional intelligence. So how can you do that? What's in your control? That's the first thing to ask. You know, when you feel that tightening, that tense, and it might be the person in front of you is pushing your button or trying to push your button. But if you've got no anger within you, they can't push your button. If you've got no annoyance, they can't push your button. So you can recognize what they're doing and say to yourself, what is in my control? I can't control the person in front of me, but I can control me. What options do I have in this situation? But these, again, take time. You know, you've got to work on them, you've got to put the effort in, you've got to put the work in. And you can ask yourself, how much effort am I willing to put into to improve my situation? If you say, I just want to be annoyed, that's it, I don't care, I'm not going to bother, then so be it. Then you'll keep that, and that's what you'll continue to do. But if you want to start changing how you behave, how you interact with people, you can say, you know, what is in my control? What options do I have? But this is kind of it's a bit of a mantra. You have to almost hope that you get these difficult situations that you can start putting this into practice, because if you never have difficult situations, you'll never be able to test this out. So, you know, then you say, you know, how much effort am I willing to put into this? You might start off with saying, well, I want to be annoyed. Or you might say, well, actually, I don't want to be annoyed. This is spoiling my day. I'm going to put some effort into this. I'm going to change the way I'm thinking about the situation. I'm going to introduce some empathy, some awareness, and I'm going to regulate my behavior. I'm going to put some more emotion into this that is more helpful. And I'm going to put some energy into this that is more helpful to the outcome that I want to achieve. So these are the types of questions. It's more about observing your behavior, observing how you interact with people. It's a bit of a watching game, because it's not something that you can practically change. You know, if you go on a course and I want to learn to drive, or I want to make paper mache figures, you know, there's steps 1, 2, 3 that you automatically put into place that you can learn something new. But with emotional intelligence, it really is about being an observer of your behaviors and emotions, becoming aware of them, regulating them, and then following through with the empathy, motivation, and social skills. It's a bit of a package, and it can be quite difficult to know where to start as well. So I'm going to give you some exercises as well for takeaway for you to start doing something differently. Did we get any questions? Yeah? No? Okay, I'll continue. Right, so what can you do differently? How can you develop your emotional intelligence? I'm just checking the time. Am I okay for time? I haven't got, I've put my phone out of the room, so I don't know what time it is.
You're okay. It's only 4:30.
Okay.
Well.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. So I want to get some more, I'll talk a little bit more and then get some questions coming. Thanks, Maddie. Thanks very much. So what can you do? What can you do differently? Because obviously, I think, well, not obviously, this is kind of what you're here for. So with the self-awareness section, what you can do is start literally becoming aware of your mood. So when you wake up, now this does involve making a commitment to you, yourself, that you're going to do this. Because if you think, I'll do it this week, but I won't do it next week, I'll do it the week after, I won't bother, there's kind of no consistency. I don't know, it could be more difficult to do. I have worked on my own emotional intelligence religiously for a number of years. At the beginning, more intensely, and then it kind of tailors off. But if I do something differently now, I know what to do and I will self-reflect. But generally, it's a bit of a well-oiled machine now. So your self-awareness really involves you, and you can use a journal, you can use, I don't know, whatever you prefer, whatever your style is. You could use your phone to record how you're feeling. You know, I went to the office today and my boss was doing X. It really annoys me when he does that and I feel my blood pressure boiling. You know, you might say this. So, you know, make a note of how you feel, what happened. You start journaling it and observing your mood and your interactions. How are you interacting with people? What's happening? How are you miscommunicating with them? Are you getting into arguments often or disagreements in the workplace, conflict? Is that you? How smoothly are your interactions going? And what about your mood? If you aren't very good at being self-aware, you could start to ask the people who are closest to you or who see you often. You know, ask in your circle, but be careful because you may get a response that you don't necessarily want to hear, but it will be the truth. So if someone's telling you make sure they're objective. If someone's telling you that when you went to the office yesterday, you came back and you were throwing things around, and I didn't want to come near you because you seemed really angry. You know, that's a truthful statement. If it's someone who just wants to push your button and say, well, you always get annoyed at things, that's not really helpful. So ask someone you trust, ask someone who's objective to help you. So ask in your trusted circle who's around you, friends, work colleagues, but make sure you trust them and make sure they're objective. If it's just one or two people, do that rather than asking a whole craft of people. So start observing your behavior. What is it that you want to change? What is it that you love? What is it that lifts you? What motivates you? What doesn't? And then when you start you're kind of gathering data about yourself, once you get to that stage, start thinking about, how do I then regulate it? So what are my values? Do my behaviors stick with my values? What are my values? Again, that's hard work. You'd have to go off and do some values work. Does my behavior, so I don't like when I get annoyed with people, and you know, if I go out and I get pissed off with someone, I don't really enjoy that because one of my values is about respect. So I know that if I'm getting annoyed and being rude to someone, I know that that's out of my values. So then I don't feel good. So that self-regulation, those values really keep me stable in terms of how I regulate, how I behave. And again, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Take ownership of your actions. Don't do the blame game. If you've done something that's not proper, not in keeping in line with your values, take ownership of it. Don't point fingers. Don't blame someone else for your own behavior. Start observing your behavior and focus on slowing down. Again, this is a big thing. It's a deep, life-changing topic in developing your emotional intelligence. And again, the quality of your relationships will really change. Focus on slowing down rather than rushing around, getting annoyed. Again, in the workplace, if you're constantly being challenged, how can you have a conversation that stops your you being annoyed or the feeling of, oh, they're picking on me? What can you do differently? What conversations can you have? How can you be more empathetic? When it comes to your motivation, it's really important to know your why, your passion, your purpose, your values. I can see people floating about in the world lost. I come in, I do a lot of these sessions. I work one-to-one with a lot of people who come to me, and they are often off key because they don't know what their values are, and they're working for an organization that don't fit in with their values, so they're less motivated. But people start to feel lost when they're out of their passion circle or their purpose circle. So get to know your why, what motivates you, what pushes you. That's something really important. Start visualizing where you are now. Is it offline? And or visualize where you want to be. That will really help you to motivate yourself and to motivate others, because remember, this is about the people skills that you're developing. And then start troubleshooting. If you're feeling lost because you're not following your passion, then you really got to start thinking about, what do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? Empathy.
Before you continue, there's one question. Can I read that to you quickly?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Oh, I haven't actually. She hasn't said it. Do you want to say the question, Delaney?
Yes, it's about empathy. One question that I always have, you were talking about those people that plays the blame game, and how would you deal with the situation when you are being pathetic with a person, and sometimes because you just say, yeah, I understand your side, I understand how you feel, and then this person just take this like okay, I am the right person, and try to make the situation in favor of themselves. So which would be the limit, or when we need to stop maybe being empathetic to deal with those kind of people?
Yeah. So the thing is, people are, unfortunately, they can be manipulative, and that's not something that you can necessarily stop or take responsibility for. So if you know that someone is trying to manipulate you, when you talk about the empathy, you'll know when you're having that conversation that this person is trying to manipulate me, or you get the feeling they're trying to manipulate you. So you could ask the question, well, what is the best outcome in this, in this situation? So it depends what you're trying to achieve. So I always talk about the collective outcome. So if it's a personal relationship versus a professional, it can be quite different. So let's talk about a professional situation. What is the best outcome for the team? If it's a piece of work and someone's trying to manipulate you to get onto their side, if their side is the correct place to be, then sometimes you just have to let it go. You just say, well, that's the best outcome, so I'm going to let them have it, so to speak. If what the person is trying to make you do or to change is not the right outcome for your team or for your organization, then you would have to find a conversation or the language to challenge that person. Not get into an argument, but and this is where communication comes into it. It's really, really important to get your words right. And that's why you've got to take the anger or frustration out of that conversation, because if you bring your anger and frustration into the conversation, then the outcome's not going to work for anybody. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yes, I loved the part of thinking about the outcome. It's a point of view that I was not thinking about. It's
so there's
point.
Always, because you know what, as humans, we love to be right even when we're wrong. Yeah, we just want to have the pleasure of saying, well, I knew it was that answer, that kind of vibe. Sometimes we've got to let that go, and it can hurt to begin with, but again, as you start developing your emotional intelligence, you let go of those things, those attachments that you have, and you're thinking about a collective outcome. It's the we show, not the me show. That is the really most powerful statement I can make. Sometimes you just got to let go of that ego and let go of, well, I want to be right. that I want that person to be wrong. You got to let go of it. And the more you do it, the less important it becomes to you being right. So there's that answer for you. So here's the empathy. So you start seeing the world from another's viewpoint. And there's some pros and cons about emotional intelligence, which I haven't included in this because we would have been here for 90 minutes. Just because you have emotional intelligence, it doesn't mean you become a doormat. Yeah, it strengthens you, but you know what you need and what the best outcome is. So whilst you have the ability to see the world from another person's viewpoint, it depends on the situation. So if it's not the best outcome for all, then whilst it's great to see the world from that person's viewpoint, you would have to then challenge and say, well, I think collectively, this is the better option for us to do. And that's when your communication skills need to kick in. That's when you need to start developing better communication skills and start improving that kind of conflict resolution skills and developing rapport so that it doesn't feel like a conflict. And another good way to do that as well is to check in and listen to the person you're speaking to. Look for the body cues, look for the body language. Are they annoyed? Are they comfortable? Are they okay? Are they saying one thing that's coming out of their mouth, but their behavior is telling you something else? You start tuning, you start fine tuning this behavior. And it is, again, quite a skill. But if you start doing it, it really does become, you start to see it, and then it becomes easier, it becomes more open. So I really, well, I was going to say it's really difficult now because we're not seeing people, but when you're interacting with people, just start watching those cues, listen to what's coming out of their mouth. You know, when someone says, how are you today? And they say, I'm fine. And you look at their body language, their body's language like, or you look at someone and they say, oh, I'm really not having a good day, but they're really smiling. You know, it kind of, it's off cue, but then that's when you start understanding people differently. It's such a wonderful skill to develop, to learn.
Just one more on the chat. Karen says, how can I not express frustration when I feel it intensely? My face always seems to give it away, even if I try to hide it. Are there excuses to get a poker face? That's so good.
Okay, poker face.
Yeah.
So now this might be confrontational for you, Karen. If you're someone, there's a saying, if you're looking for something to disapprove of, you will always find something to disapprove of. So this is where you've got to start doing the self-awareness thing. Now, I might ask you, is your annoyance justified? And you'll tell me yes, because of course it is, because I'm right. It's my justification. Is it justified? So before you even get to the poker face stage, you've got to start doing that internal work. So are you getting annoyed, frustrated for the right reasons? Do you need to get annoyed and frustrated? Is there a different way you can handle it or deal with the situation? And it could be that you've been doing it for so long, it's just your default position, and that's the way you do it. So you can't do anything differently. So that's one side of things. Are you around people who press your buttons? They push your buttons. They know you're going to get annoyed. They know you're going to get angry. So they push your button because they know if I say this, Karen's going to do that. You could be so easy to read. So you've got to start with your self-awareness. You've got to start talking to people who are around you, people that you trust, people who are objective. And that could be possibly hard to find, depends on who you've got in your circles. So I hope that helps you to get a starting point at least. Obviously, I can't speak to your specific situations. I don't know if it's personal, professional. Maybe you like getting pissed off. I don't know. Maybe you like getting frustrated. Maybe you feel validated in doing that. Maybe it makes you feel important. Sorry, that's really hard. They are the kind of questions that you need to start asking yourself. That's quite deep. So have a think about those, and happy to take this offline as well if you want some more specific pointers for your particular situation. So here we go with the social skills as well. So does that answer your question, by the way, Karen? Does that help or not at all? I'll let you come back to Maddie.
Yeah. There's two more. Do you want me to
Oh
read
yeah,
them?
go ahead, yeah.
Muhammad says, how to deal with belligerent attitude when you're always good to them.
Belligerent, sorry, how to,
belligerent attitude.
yeah, no, is that how to deal with belligerent attitude when?
Are you always good to them? I guess to the person who is showing
Yeah,
that.
see, I'm reading between the lines here. You think you're right, Mohammed, because you think you're always good to that person. Maybe that person doesn't think you're good to them. Maybe there's a difference of opinions. Have you sat down and had that open conversation? Again, communication skills. I'm just getting onto that. Ask or clarify, don't make assumptions. So I don't know your situation. You might be thinking, I'm really good to this person. I'm always right. I always do this X, Y, and Z for that person, and they don't appreciate it. Maybe they don't recognize what you're doing. Maybe they don't see what you're doing as something good. I don't know, because it sounds like a very specific situation. And just reading with what you've said is, you feel like I'm always good to that person. Why aren't they appreciating me? So that sounds almost like a bit of ego as well. Sorry, but it could be that. So take a step back with your self-awareness. Can you ask yourself more challenging questions? Perhaps you could stop doing those things. Maybe you don't need to do them. Maybe they're not helpful. Maybe you think they're helpful and they're not. No, there's three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. I can't tell from what you've said which one is which. But the emotional intelligence is literally about analyzing, stripping back, going back to the basics of the way you live at your core. It's deep. I can't say anything bigger than that. And it is about, what is the outcome that you seek? What is the outcome that we seek? The collective outcome, rather than this, just does it make me feel good? So not about the ego. Hope that helps you. Might have given you more questions and answers. But
there are a few more. Do you want to read them, or can you access the chat?
Yeah, I can have a look. Yeah.
Two more.
So that was Mohammed. I have to put my glasses on because that's quite small. Oh, sorry, I said Mohammed. It's Hamid. Hamid. So it's Hamid. Does that answer some of your questions? Does that help you? So, okay, I'm going to go to Sarah. Sometimes when I show empathy, I feel that I also don't preserve my boundaries because I see things. So you could be giving, Sarah, you could be giving too much of yourself. So there's there's no, what do I call it, litmus test. There's no grade about how much empathy you get. If you feel as if you're being taken advantage of, you just got to say no. And it might be, again, Sarah, that you've put yourself into a situation where you're people pleasing, you're constantly saying yes. You think it's empathy when it's more, doormat, saying yes to everybody rather than saying no. So again, that self-awareness, you've got to start exploring. Maybe you just start saying no for a time and seeing what happens. That could be something that you could start doing, because you're not preserving your boundaries. So maybe you need to say more for a little while to start exploring what needs to change for you. Again, don't know your specific situation, so I can only offer you some basics around that. What I'm going to do, sometimes I feel feedback, somebody's verbal language, if their verbal language, body language are incongruent, so that I open the conversation up. Okay, yeah, that's great. I think I get that. You when you're not sure about what's going on, you open the conversation up to make sure that you've got it, so that you're both, rather than making assumptions, you are on the right side. Okay, I'm going to come to the last one is Siobhan. I'm going to, that's great. I'm going to finish the presentation and then come back to the questions in a second. And maybe we can take a few mutes off if you need to speak a little bit more. So social skills, I think I've said this already. It's about we, not me. Think team. When you're out talking to people, be more curious rather than thinking, I want to say my piece. Ask questions. Start thinking about the person in front of you. But don't lose yourself. Do share something about yourself, but try and make it more of a balanced conversation and start improving your communication. So active listening is about listening to the person in front of you, listen to what they've got to say, asking them questions, rather than jumping in to reply just because me, I've got something to say. You know, think about listening to that person. And something I hear, see all the time, that we're not listening to each other because we're jumping in. I've got something to say. I want to say what I've got to say is more important than what you have. So start practicing active listening. You get to know someone in front of you so much more when you start really listening to them and tuning in. And ask or clarify. Don't make assumptions. Don't just because someone said something, if you're not sure, still ask and check in. So I think the benefits are obvious for nurturing your emotional intelligence. What's not to love? You're better able to manage outcomes for your emotions for different outcomes. If you're a leader, that's another one. I'm doing the developing your leadership skills next week. I will talk about emotional intelligence a little bit. You're better able to lead, whether you are in a leadership role or you're in a group of people. You can be a leader without having leadership in your title. It gives you greater confidence and certainty about yourself to be and do differently. Obviously, it improves your personal brand, what you're known for, how you invite people to come into your space, and obviously the improved communication and relationships with yourself first and then others. I know I said it's not the me show, but when your relationship with yourself is better, you have better relationship with others. So these are the questions. I'm going to share these with you. I'm not going to go through them now because they are deep for you. Take one, work on it, then do the others. So I'll share this with you, or I'll send it to Maddie so she can share it with you afterwards. So I'm going to go back to the questions in a second, but I'm going to say I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's from the late, great Maya Angelou. So how do you want to make people feel? What impact do you want to leave in life? I'm going to finish off with a final poll, and then I'll get back to the last question. And so I've obviously gone through this relatively big topic reasonably quickly. So are you committed to changing one thing when it comes to developing your EQ? And if you are, that's great, fantastic. If you say no, that's okay too. Maybe you're not ready yet. Maybe it's too scary. Maybe it's too big. Don't know where to start. If you're on the fence, what is stopping you? What do you need to do or see to be convinced to do something different? Maybe you think it's too hard. Maybe you don't know enough. That's great. Go and explore more. But I do encourage you to, if you want to build better relationships, I would encourage you to do some more. So I'm going to keep that open. I'm just going to go on to the questions in a second before. I'm not going to end the poll yet. These are my contact details. You are very welcome to get in contact, ask me a personal question. If you want to have a 30-minute session with me, you are welcome to use the calendar link there. I'll also share it here in the chat box. No, I can't do that. I'll copy and paste it and I'll share it with you. But I'm now going to go over to the questions as well, so that, let me go to my, you see me clunking around, I'm very sorry. I'm going to get my diary for you. So in the meantime, right, popping that in the box there so you can have a chat with me. I'm not going to hold a gun to your head and make you buy anything from me. Happy to have a conversation with you. And I'm going to now go back to the questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have come from this session, just let me know so I know where you know me from. So I'm going to end the poll now. Thank you very much for contributing. So an astounding 93% of you have said yes, you're going to do something. You are committed to changing one thing when it comes to developing your EQ. And 7% have said maybe. So again, as I said, I would encourage you to find your maybe. How can you turn that maybe into a yes? What can you do differently? So let's go back to the questions. So I remember I was at SAFA I've worked on calming my reaction, having self-awareness, even empathy, but since we have no control on how people behave, I often decide that I do not have to take more of their behavior in compassion to myself, and I end the relationship, which is fine. It's perfectly fine to walk away, because some people can flog a dead horse, but you've got to remember that you can't change the behavior of others. You can only change self. So if that's what you need to do, you also need to protect yourself. So emotional intelligence is also about looking after yourself as well. It is about self-care. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you telling me some of your, it's quite personal for this stuff. If someone's really close to me, I tend to connect to their problem too much. Whenever they're telling me about their problems, I feel like they're
I'm really sorry. My question, I split it without wanting.
Elena,
yeah,
that's,
exactly.
That's okay. I'm reading it now. Yeah, you're allowing other people's emotions. How can you create a shield? So do you recognize you're doing it when you're doing it?
I do recognize it, and I feel that energy. I feel that, like, whenever, let me say, my best friend tells me something, I'm like, I fall into this pool of emotions she has. Like, I'm reliving what she already lived.
Yeah, and I don't want to stop people from being themselves. Is it something that you don't want to do anymore?
I don't want, because afterwards, like, because we go in the morning, for example, from 7 to 8 every morning for a walk, and I'm trying to have a positive morning, and every time I was going before alone, she started coming with me now, and after I started going with her, I started feeling very anxious in the morning, because I want to help her, but I cannot help her, and on the other side, my whole day afterwards is like, I'm thinking, how can I help her?
So just to cut you, sorry, a little bit,
Yes.
is bringing negative conversation, something that is really heavy.
Yes, exactly. Like, I don't know, problems with her relationships, problems with her, like, I don't know, she's far away from home and stuff like that. So I cannot, there are stuff which I can give her advice, but then it hits
Okay.
me. So
Elena, stop giving her advice. Give her back her power. So you say, I really love being out with you. And so again, choose whether you want to say this or not. I really love coming out with you for this walk. What can we do to change your situation? So you're giving her back. So rather than giving her advice, being empathetic and nurturing her, you're listening to her. So by the very fact that you're listening to her, you're already helping her. But that is the limit of you're not, are you a counselor? Are you a therapist?
not at all, no.
Right. So give her back her power. So you can say something, and it depends. Maybe you could stop going out with her. I don't know. That could be quite harsh. But you could say, what can you do to get yourself out of this situation? So give her back the energy to answer her own question, her own problems.
I understand. Yeah.
And you have to be a bit more honest. I know you don't want to be, because the other thing is, people who take on other people's emotions tend to be people pleasers. They don't want to say no because they don't want to offend someone. But you have to set your boundaries. That's very important. And the more you do it, the stronger you become. So you have to set your boundaries. You have to start saying no to what you don't want in your life. So take back your own power as well, and give her back her own power.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Sarah, yes, you can have access to the slides. And and Maddie's just saying, again, I can't see the time. Did I answer everybody's question? So there's a lot around empathy, taking on other people's stuff. So, empathy is wonderful, but if it's affecting you negatively, you have to start saying no, and you have to find the strength to start saying no, or write a script for yourself that says, I'm not going to take this on anymore. So that you have to start finding a way to do that. And again, I can't get to your specific problem, because you'd have to start talking and you'd have to share all your life, but yeah. Okay. Temper oneself and slow down to think instead of defaulting to reacting defensively. So Sam, thank you. Have you got advice to temper oneself and slow down to think instead of, so how much time are you spending? So first question, how much time are you spending trying to temper yourself? Is it something that you only think about when you fly off the handle, or when you act defensively? What's the reason you act defensively? Is there something going on with yourself that you're not happy about? What is the reason? So then again, the self-awareness comes in. You know, I'm really sorry to bring this up. It could be something from your childhood as well. It could be your default position that you've walked the road for so long, you have to make a drastic change to stop to reacting defensively. You know, ask yourself the question, is this person out to hurt me, or is it me hurting myself, or me taking it that way? Start asking yourself those questions. Why am I reacting like this? So start finding out what's going on for you, and then do something differently. So my book, I did have the Daniel Goleman book here. It is called EQ, Why It Can Matter More Than, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, by Daniel Goleman. I'll just write Daniel Goleman there. So if you look up that book by Daniel Goleman, oh, sorry, I just sent that to you, Accra. Everyone, Daniel Goleman. If you want a book, there you go. Did I answer everybody's questions?
Yeah, I think there's...
Oh yeah, Karen.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm just reading. My main takeaway so far is to ask more. That would automatically slow things down for me. Yeah, be more curious. Give me the ability to turn a wrong assumption, brilliant, into an insightful fact, wonderful, which might still justify exactly, and a diplomatic approach around it. Yeah, you're slowing down, and that, I think that's a really good comment, Karen. You know what they say when you get annoyed and you're about to respond through an email. You get an email and it makes your blood boil, and you're just about to, and you start violently typing. What they say is you should walk away, go and do something differently, and then come back and then see how you feel, or leave it overnight. That's exactly the same with a conversation, a phone call. All of those, when you when you go for it off the handle, you just it just pours out. Then it all comes out. It's not quite what you wanted to say, and it's okay to take that moment to just say, you know what, I'm not going to answer you now. I'm just going to take a moment. Say that, walk away, and then keep practicing it. That's the other thing you can do. Also, Sam, you could do that as well. Before, rather than getting defensive, just say, I'm going to take a moment. I'm just going to step out of the room. I'm going to step away. So, okay, I hope you got what you wanted from this webinar. I'll put my slide back up so you can get in contact with me if you want to. Yeah. So, yeah, Karen says something else there. Any more questions? And then I'm going to hand it back to Maddie.
Just don't miss the next one next week. It's on the let me see if I've got the date right. It would be next Thursday, isn't it?
Yes, it's next Thursday the 23rd, same time, 4 p.m. And it's about developing your leadership skills. Yeah.
And we'll hope to see everyone back on the same webinars. And I'm going to upload this one on the YouTube about a few hours from now. And also check the Twitter space for Twitter for more webinars that we do, and often they're free and everyone's welcome. And any feedback, anything you want to let us know, just get in touch. And I think that's kind of it for today, but really amazing to see so many people joining this webinar. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's quite fast as well, but hopefully I got to everything that you wanted covered. And yeah, thanks for being here. I do appreciate you coming to the sessions. Great. All right, thank you everyone. I'm gonna end this, so don't want to cut anyone off, but see you at the next one. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.